All right, so it's Sunday again, and that means another weekly recap and reflection video. I'm actually starting to enjoy this a lot and hopefully get some feedback from you and other people watching. This was the last week of our Silicon Valley Takeover, which was this 3-week trip with a lot of founders from our global portfolios, a lot of them from LATAM. And this last week, we had a few fireside chats. We did a company visit to Stripe. We visited or assisted Startup Grind and then Stripe sessions, which was very, very interesting. And then we recorded a lot of content, say goodbye to everyone. And that's it. It's a grab. It was a very successful 3 weeks. And today, I guess I can do a couple of things. I can talk about this week. Of course, there were some interesting moments. And then I can also do some reflections on the whole thing. And actually, we just started May, so I'm also happy to do some reflections on just the end of the month. So let's get started. So on Monday, we had 2 activities. We had a fireside chat with Greg Tanaka, who's the founder of PDD, a portfolio company that we backed from the Global Fund. He's building this amazing system to pretty much just start having, instead of a code base, a prompt base in a way, and then have this very sophisticated system that takes that and turns it into production code in a more deterministic way than just using the current coding agents. And we also had Miguel Paredes, who's a great AI expert. He's been an investor, consultant, academic, researcher. He's a PhD. So it was great to have like these both perspectives from the founder, fundraising, who's Greg actually also has invested in funds. So he has, this perspective. And then Miguel was also able to share a lot about how corporates are thinking about AI and adopting AI. I think there were some very interesting insights from both of them. From Greg, I think like he made a lot of comments about how startups, they don't have more money, they don't have like a bigger brand or more customers or more talent. So they have to have something to try to be successful. And he mentions, and it's very obvious, like speed being one of them. And his vision, and I think like this is one of the things we were trying to understand from all the founders who were traveling to the Bay Area, was to understand if what we see from OpenAI and Anthropic and some of these other players really is kind of like a speed that has never seen before in these size of organizations. I think Greg was able to give us this feeling of saying like, hey, like these big organizations, they still have like a bureaucracy tax, and they are not able to make decisions as quickly, and incentives are not as aligned. So definitely, as a startup, you need to move fast. And one of the things that I thought about when he was talking was that he mentioned that the superpower for a lot of startups is just having the capability to pivot very quickly. And I was making a reflection around how in some ecosystems, especially the ones that have less startups and less funding, a lot of times we see pivots as a failure or a step back or a way that, we're maybe not, we're just not right. So now, like that's maybe accepting some failure or something like that, when in reality it's a measurement of progress. And we saw that a lot with Ali a couple of weeks ago with his book like 3 Startups, 40 Pivots. But like hearing it from Greg just resonated a little bit different about, of course that's the journey, and the faster that you can learn, the faster that you can evolve and adapt, especially now with AI. I think like that's potentially better. So yeah, I mean, adapting and evolving quick, that's good. And then from Miguel, I think like just his vision about AI from more like, a human-centered approach and how we enable humans to be better with AI instead of trying to just think about replacing them, trying to find really new use cases and not just trying to think about like, oh, how can I automate something to remove someone from a process? And that was interesting. Then after that, I had the opportunity to go to Startup Grind, which is this big conference. And a day before the big conference, they had this track of founders from everywhere in the world to meet with investors. And I had the opportunity to participate in a fireside chat with one of the investors from Alumni Ventures, which is also a great fund. And we were fielding questions, like it was just like ask me anything. And it was really fun. I think I was able to share a lot of value from having spent like 2.5 weeks trying to find some answers, and then hearing some of the same questions and really trying to give them in a very fun and direct way. So that was super fun. And then after that, I instantly came back to the house, and we had a session with Freddy Vega, who's the founder of Platzi, a very big startup in Latin America. I've known Freddy for over a decade. He's a great founder. He's a great content producer. Now he's an author, a best-selling author. And one thing that Freddy has that is very cool is that he has a lot of conviction. He's opinionated, and he's very direct. So we turned his session also a little bit in a Ask Me Anything, and he shared a lot of, from his perspective, just like management and how to think about like fundraising and strategy and many things. But then I also turned that opportunity, because it was our last fireside chat in the house where we're staying, and we hosted so many other fireside chats. I think we ended up having so we had 21 activities. Out of those, 13 were fireside chats in these past 2 weeks. So I used that opportunity to kind of turn it around and ask questions, like what questions the founders had in their minds, and then get Freddy to help them answer some of those questions, or at least add some value to that. It was a very energetic session, and like one thing that I leave from like having heard Freddy is just like, you're not gonna be right or wrong, or like there's a lot of nuance, but being opinionated really allows to move the conversation. It allows to have a side, and I think like crafting your perspective on things is very important. Then after that, on Tuesday, the group went to Stripe, and they had a fireside chat with an engineering manager. Visiting Stripe offices is just amazing, and it's very beautiful. I couldn't participate on that because I had to go to another event. I was invited to DigitalOcean's Deploy conference, and it was a great conference. It was super fun. And they also invited me to participate in a panel around venture capital and AI, and the other panelists were amazing people. And being in that room also, like not an Ask Me Anything like the day before, more like a panel discussion around how different funds are thinking about AI. And, it was very, very similar to what I experienced a month ago at HumanX. It was very interesting. And one thing that I left out of that panel is how, as a panelist, you always have a choice of trying to sound smart, or try to sell what you're doing, or try to, like create a personal brand or something like that. Or you can also like understand who's in the room and how to provide value. And, I was just there, and I was trying to think like, well, like I could try to show off and kind of like find some like interesting talking point. But I can also be real and just try to understand what the people who in the room, who were mostly founders, are trying to achieve when they're there, and what they're trying to know from investors. So I was very like transparent. I didn't try to like position like a sophisticated like talking point or anything like that. I just said what I thought would be useful from my perspective, especially having spent this time in like with so many activities and interesting people. And it was very refreshing that after the panel, I had a little bit of time to talk with some people who were at the conference, and then like at the networking event that was after that. And like I got some really good comments of people saying like, oh, hey, you answered this, which was, very direct and real. Like an example would be that they asked us like, hey, how do you think the world is going to look like in 5 years for venture capital, for startups? And I was like, I don't know. Like we heard from the CTO of Replit that he only has a roadmap for 3 months. I'll mention something that from Sam Altman, like similar to that in a second. But I was like, I honestly don't know. It's really hard. Like humans are very bad at extrapolating exponential growth. It seems to me that there's a lot of unknowns on how these models are going to work out, like how more powerful they could be, how fast adoption could be, energy and data centers and infrastructure and utilities, and like scaling this globally, and then how like each one of these industries are going to be. But then what I thought that was very interesting is that on the other side, what we do now know today is, the model that you can use today, how that's impacting the industries that how you can provide value to the customers. So the answer that I gave was like, hey, I honestly don't know how the world is going to look like in 5 years. I don't know. I don't know how I would underwrite a company for that. So, but what I do know is the wave that we're looking at right now and I'm trying to catch it, right? So if you are a surfer and you saw like these amazing waves, would you be trying to paddle and get like the next wave that is coming right now? Or would you be thinking like, oh, how is the weather going to be in a week from now? Maybe I should be thinking about that. Like that's not going to allow you to actually, like surf in this moment. So my recommendation for the people in that room and for myself and like in this video is like, like do the thing that you know now that you can do, and then of course if you have like any vantage point to a specific industry or like a something that you believe is going to be in the future, like that's great, you can start to build towards that. But ultimately I feel like I could have just said like a random interesting like, oh, I think like this industry is going to be like that, and I don't know, like would love to see that video in 5 years and see if I was right or not, but it's just not true. So I don't know. And then after that, we went to a great event from Stripe. They did like this networking session at an arcade that had like all these old games and like some new games. And it was a very fun moment. I feel like one thing that I would notice is that we were locked in, like really they're trying to like get value from the sessions or like trying to work and trying to go to these events and hustle and everything, that we didn't have as much like just fun like pure fun moments. And I think like that was one of them, and it was super fun just playing around with founders, like from like air hockey and basketball and like some arcade games. That was super fun, and it's kind of weird. Like I feel like it really, like when I was going back through the week before recording, I was like, oh, that was a very nice moment. And then like some founders that day, during that time, they went through to a startup grind. Some of the founders that we brought were going to go to the next day also to startup grind, and some others were going to join Stripe sessions. And we've been good partners with Stripe. It's a company that we respect a lot. It's obviously a very important company in the industry, and they had invited me before to this Stripe sessions event. So for the next day, I was like, oh, this is a good conference in Moscone Center. I'm surely going to learn something both from payments and from Stripe, but also about just generally AI. We're supposed to have like the day one, which was Wednesday. The last session was with Greg Brockman, CTO of OpenAI, co-founder, and also co-founder at Stripe. So we're excited about that. I don't know, like I just had like this expectation that for me, after 2.5 weeks of very intimate sessions that we curated with the purpose of, helping us understand the valley and get more connected, that this was going to be a great kind of like finish of the experience. But I wasn't expecting so much, I guess. And it ended up being so much. And let me kind of like try to digest a little bit of why and how. But honestly, after 3 weeks of running as crazy, as fast, with a big group of founders, and as an organizer of that and generating content, I felt like I was already kind of like at top or max, or just doing everything. And that Stripe sessions for me was going to be a little bit more laid back experience, because I was no longer organizing anything, and I could just be a participant and enjoy the conference, learn a little bit, and then kind of like finish everything. It ended up being maybe the most intense moment for me, at least personally, of the whole 3 weeks. And I don't think it's just because Stripe is a great like company and they did a great conference. I think it's also about like the moment, like these specific Stripe sessions I feel like had like a couple of very crazy moments for me. So let's get started, right? So on Wednesday, I wake up early, go to their keynote in the morning, and they have like this hour and a half or hour and 45 minutes keynotes. You can watch it online, where they just talk about everything that they want to release. And in less than 2 hours, they talk about like 40 or 50 product releases. And I'm talking from like Stripe projects that is orchestrating how to deploy projects that you buy code to like different providers, to like link adding a wallet and then like a CLI and agentic commerce. We see like Stripe console, which was this like cursor like experience for your Stripe account. Tons of things around fraud prevention. They announced like Stripe Treasury, which is very interesting, and they say like instant transfer, zero fees, zero currency risk. Like it's a very crazy product. And then like they show some agentic commerce, and I feel like I had been ignoring the payment part of like how AI is changing everything, specifically for payments, and how obviously payments is involved with everything. And at that moment, I was like, oh, I cannot ignore this anymore. I need to understand it really well. And especially seeing the demos, a quick side comment there. It took like 5 minutes from the start of the conference to them like throwing a prompt to Cloud Code in front of an audience of like 10,000 people and having Cloud Code kind of like build something, do something, agentic coding. I was like, wow. I mean, like, this is not a room of developers. This is just a room of, founders and startups and partners from Stripe and big corporate. And, we're watching someone vibe code a demo in front of us. So it's really like mainstream. Anyways, so in that day, we see this example of MPP, which is Model Payment Protocol, something that they it's an open protocol to allow for transactions to happen from an agent to an agent. They announced that in March. Now, right, like we're at the end of April, so it's like 45 days later, and they show these couple of different examples from like people paying, like an agent paying something with Link that already probably has your payment information, so it's like a very seamless experience. And then they start talking about like token usage and how you can have a company that is selling tokens, so maybe you want to charge, but instead of trying to charge as a subscription or maybe like a prepaid package, or maybe you're offering credit to your customers, what would happen if you can stream payments? And they show these like pay as you burn example where you're literally just charging the customer as they are using tokens in real time. And that's all through MPP using their Tempo, which is a blockchain that they created. So it was very interesting. And you can use MPP in Solana and other blockchains. I think like specifically for stream payments right now, it's just with Tempo, but I'm sure like it's going to work with other blockchains. But that was a moment, I was just sitting in the audience and I was like, oh my God. I need to understand like a couple of things. So they announced like all these like 40, 50 like huge product updates from all parts of like the fintech world to like, from fraud prevention to payments to treasury to everything. And like each one of them, I'm thinking like, how does that impact our portfolio companies? How does that allows us to build new things? Is there like a new kind of like competition somewhere? Is there like a new opportunity? And that's super tiring. So I feel like I needed to digest the whole keynote. But after going through like some of the main companies that I wanted to ping and say like, hey, you should like consider adopting this, or check this out or whatever. The next thing I was thinking was like, oh, I need to become kind of like more kind of like understand MPP a little bit more. And I'll talk about more on Thursday, the next day, about MPP specifically. But then like at the end of the day, we had this crazy moment where we're supposed like, we have 18,000 people last session of the day. We're just in the main, like keynote space. And suddenly we're waiting for, one of the founders from Stripe to interview Greg Brockman, which, it's a great person to kind of like listen about AI, and like we're there, right? Like it's super exciting. And suddenly like Patrick comes out and he's like, well, we're not going to interview Greg for whatever reason. I'm sure like there's something related to the current lawsuit that is happening. But we have someone else. And suddenly Sam Altman is there, right? And that's just crazy. I mean, like everyone was like, well, like it might be better to hear directly from Sam a lot of these things. So it was like an hour of like a great fireside chat there. It was funny. It was direct. I think like Sam was like, I don't know, it's hard to read like how much to take his comments, just directly, or how much like to also try to understand what he's trying to communicate or whatever. But I would highlight two things. One, he did mention a lot about how he feels that now he's building utilities. So he feels like the biggest bottleneck from now to humanity adopting AI is just having enough data centers, and that means enough energy and chips, and doing that efficiently. And that was super interesting to hear him so concentrated on that. And then when he was asked like, hey, how much visibility do you have to your roadmap on models, on intelligence, on how things might pan out, he said like, well, maybe 2 years, right? So it was interesting to hear, like not even him would do like a 5-year prediction, and or at least not on AI. So that was interesting, and I feel like that's liberating for me in many ways. Yeah, and then day two was interesting because then on Thursday, my whole mission was to go to this conference, trying to understand MPP and see how I could apply it. First, just myself, and try to do like small experiments, and then try to understand like how I could use that in just like the portfolio of companies that we work with. And so I went and I said like, well, I probably should hear the keynote first, and then kind of like I'll get my plan started on what I want to do here. So we went to the keynote. We saw another amazing demo. Also of MPP, like paying for access to information for an agent that was doing some research. So it could access like Bloomberg-like information, but instead of paying for like a huge subscription, just specifically the information that it needed. And these are like micropayments, right? Like it's 0.006 cents or whatever. But it's an agent that is transacting and has a wallet and has a payment method and everything. So after that, I was again like, yes, that's what I want to learn. So then I went downstairs to the expo, which is usually just like a marketing thing where you see like some companies and you can like get a pitch from these companies. But Stripe did something interesting, which is that like there were some companies and you could like go and meet them and get like their like their info about what they're doing and some swag. They also had like stands for a lot of the teams at Stripe. So I went and I spoke with like the agentic framework guys and with the Link people who were building the CLI, and got demos from some of these things. And then I went to the Tempo stand and understood a little bit how to adopt that. And I was like so lucky that like the creator of MPP was there at the stand, and I just had like a long conversation with him and with people in his team around how to adopt this technology. And then I put myself a challenge of saying like, I want to adopt MPP in the next 48 hours. I want to have something working, which ended up being really hard because I ended up traveling and doing other stuff. But I did end up with like a whole list of ideas. I vibe coded a whole bunch of demos, which now I see them working. And now for my next week, I really want to do like some MPP stuff. I'm going to be on ClawCon Mexico City next Saturday. And I'm giving a talk, which I haven't prepared. So it's going to be great because I'm going to prepare something with MPP and hopefully launch something where there's something from a portfolio company or something where we're transacting with MPP. So that's one of my big challenges for this next week. And then maybe like the last few things that I would mention from the takeover is that after Stripe, well, we heard from Daniel Gross and Nat Friedman, and those were also great, like people to close the session. Very smart people now at Meta, and great investors, great creators. Like they've done so much. And one thing that I would mention from them, like I didn't follow them as closely. I will after this keynote, but I felt like they were silly, fun, weird, relaxed, but very clearly amazing operators and really smart. A couple of the things that they mentioned: one, that you should stockpile computers because they are going to get more expensive, and that was an interesting insight that I might be actually acting on top of it. Another one is that they mentioned that the world is going to be weird and that we're going to be future shocked for the next they mentioned 10 to 15 years. So that's super exciting, I guess. So next 10 years, like the next decade, apparently, they were not doing any specific predictions, but I feel like the prediction is that the world is going to be like change very fast. And I guess that's the reason why it's so hard to make predictions, right? And then the last one is they mentioned that every individual contributor in your team, you should now see them as an army of people that have a strategy, and you should do asset allocation depending on the performance of their strategies. So kind of like a hedge fund, trying different approaches. And that I felt that was interesting. So the two last things that I would mention from the takeover is that one, after that, we went to a Mexas, like Mexicans in Silicon Valley event. They do this frequently, usually on Thursdays. And it was just like amazing. There was a lot of people who were coming from Stripe sessions. There were a lot of local people, a lot of people who work at different startups. And being there, like it also like made me feel like, like the LATAM community in the Bay Area is extremely powerful. And that was a great reminder of that. And then at the end, like the last thing I'll mention is that through, that last day, and then the next day, like all the people in the takeover were departing back, or like going to their next destination, or closing this. And I used that opportunity to record some podcast with some of the founders, and it was very beautiful to hear really amazing feedback from this experience, to hear the transformations. On day one, we gave people challenges, and they were kind of like silly, and I told them, like, you can ignore them, but if they inspire you to do something. And they range from like doing an event, like organizing a full event, or trying to meet 10 random people in San Francisco and pitch them their product, to trying to find an angel investor, to so many other things. And like I talked with founders, and they had shared some of these, but then like at the end, like I was trying to get a lot of these kind of like what happened with that. And like there were two amazing events that happened from this. There was one person who found an angel investor and got an investment. We had people who ended up meeting a lot of people, getting customers. We had a company that had an idea of at some point expanding to the US, and they left with 2 US clients. So now they're going to be spending like every 1 or 2 weeks sending someone from the team to try to continue that effort. So that was pretty cool. I feel like that was interesting. And then like some closing thoughts about, like we hear a lot of people saying like, oh, like, should I go and spend more time in the Bay Area or not? How do I do it? How expensive it is? I think we were very smart on how to do it. So like, at least on the expense side, it was extremely cheap for, in comparison to staying at hotels or something like that. So like definitely, if you're able to hack your way into making it more affordable, that helps. I think a lot of people are like, well, like you can learn a lot of these things from the internet, and I'm sure you can see like some of the sessions from Stripe sessions online, and you can hear some of these comments. You can watch this video and get some of it. But the reality is that I was there for 4 weeks, had the opportunity to hear from Fei Li at HumanX, from Sam Altman in 2 different events, from Hasabi's from DeepMind in another event, from like a lot of people who are building these products, like thinking about like, oh, I need to adopt MPP, and then having the opportunity to talk with the person who created the standard, who's thinking about this. Like, those things only happen if you go to the places where these people are. And then like, if you think about the examples I was telling you with the founders, like meeting people, getting feedback, creating those relationships, really hearing directly from people who have raised and exited and invested, and you really finding that that's a lot of people, and then finding that those people are like one of like so many amazing people that are just concentrated in this region, and that most people are very open to just helping and supportive. I think like that's very unique. So I would rate 10 out of 10 the Silicon Valley Takeover that we did this year. It actually challenges us a lot about, we want to repeat this in 6 months ish, and I don't know how to make it better. I don't even know how to make it just as good as this one. So I guess like that's going to be an interesting challenge. For me, the next week is going to be playing with MPP, trying to understand that, taking all the notes that I took in this last month, and seeing all the ideas that I had, and planning what I'm gonna do with some of those ideas, trying to continue. I think like generating content was pretty cool. I cannot let that stop just because I'm not doing a crazy experience like the takeover. So that's interesting. And just like even recording this video is a way for me to, like say like I need to continue. Like this been super cool. I've had like so many interactions with people from having shared like some of our adventures online. So that's pretty cool. And then, I mean, in a more personal note, I feel like the whole energy management through this experience has been interesting, because even though it was crazy, we had like 40 something founders, 3 weeks, a week before in a conference, like running from one place to another. Like, I was able to keep my meditation streak going on. I did the exercise that I needed. I ate correctly. So I actually lost weight in these last 3 weeks, which is crazy. And now, like, it's interesting to know, like, now that I'm back to my normal routine, how do I also keep, like it's going to be easier to keep my good habits, but I need to also keep kind of like the thoughts that I had, and the ideas that I had, and the speed that I got from all of these. And I'm sure like all the founders who went through the takeover are also like hopefully going through, what did I learn? Can I apply? How can I keep this going? That's one. And then the second piece is that, of course, like for me, like I've gone to the Bay Area a lot of times. I've led groups like this before. Everyone, like this was the best, I think, but every time that I've done it has been great. And for the founders who went, I think like there's all this range from people who are like, maybe it was their first time, and now they're thinking like, how do I go again, and with what frequency? Well, some people who are like, oh, I need to move there. Like, what's a path to do that? We even had like someone who was already kind of thinking about like moving actually start the process like right now, and it's visas, it's moving like families, making strong decisions, but it was pretty cool. So all in all, yeah, pretty exciting week. Looking forward to a week of a little bit of not necessarily downtime, but reflection and deep work. Not that we didn't have like some deep work in these last 3 weeks, but it's gonna be like way more this next week. So that's pretty cool. See you next week.